I was standing in my kitchen in Birmingham, Alabama, stirring a pot of vegetable soup, when my granddaughter's voice shattered the fragile peace of my day. Sophie is only 8 years old, still with that innocence that makes her words cut deeper because she doesn't know how devastating they can be. She looked up from her coloring book and said casually, "Grandma, Mommy, and Daddy said they're putting you in a nursing home and taking your money today." The wooden spoon slipped in my hand, clattering against the pot. My heart slammed against my ribs, and for a moment I thought I might faint. "What did you just say, sweetheart?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay steady, even as the room seemed to tilt sideways. She kept coloring unbothered, as if she had just told me about the weather. "They said you're getting too old to live by yourself." Daddy said something about papers and a judge. Mommy was excited because she finally gets to buy that big house she wants. At 69 years old, I thought I had experienced every kind of betrayal life could hand me, but nothing prepared me for this. Not from my own son. Not from Benjamin, the boy I had raised alone after his father died. The boy I had worked 2 jobs to support, the boy I had sacrificed everything for, so he could go to college and have the kind of life I never had. As Sophie's words sank in, I gripped the counter, fighting the nausea rising in my throat. Suddenly, the subtle patterns of the past 6 months clicked into place. Benjamin's sudden insistence on accompanying me to doctor's appointments, Victoria's comments about how hard it must be for me to keep up with the bills, the way they asked questions about my lawyer, my finances, my will. I had dismissed it all as care, as concern. But it wasn't, it was calculation. And now, thanks to the innocent honesty of a child, I knew their plan. They were trying to have me declared incompetent so they could seize control of my estate, over $1 million I had built with sweat and sacrifice. They wanted to put me away, strip me of my dignity, and live off the fruits of my life's labor. I smiled at Sophie so she wouldn't see the storm inside me. "I'm fine, honey. Keep coloring," I said softly. But I wasn't fine. I was furious. In that moment, a lifetime of being underestimated crystallized into something sharp, something unbreakable. If Benjamin and Victoria thought I was a confused old woman they could manipulate, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. I began making calls. My attorney, Patricia Wong, answered on the first ring. I explained everything Sophie had told me, my voice trembling but resolute. Patricia didn't hesitate. "Elaine, we need to set up an irrevocable trust today. Move your assets out of their reach before they can act." Next, I called my financial advisor, Robert Kim. His professional calm faltered when I explained what Benjamin and Victoria were planning. "That's unconscionable," he said. "But don't worry, we can move your investments into a secure structure within hours." As Sophie hummed over her crayons, I dismantled my son's inheritance piece by piece. The deed to my house, my savings, my investments, all of it transferred into the trust with Sophie named as the primary beneficiary. Every move I made was both an act of protection and an act of war. Finally, I called my neighbor Joyce, a retired social worker and a trusted friend. "Joyce, I need a witness, and I may need you to take Sophie home if things get messy." She didn't ask questions, just promised she'd be there. By the time the courier arrived with the papers, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Fear had burned away, leaving only resolve. I signed my name with steady hands as Joyce looked on. "Are you sure about this?" she asked gently. "This is a big step." "I'm sure," I said. "This isn't just about protecting money, it's about protecting my dignity and Sophie's future." An hour later, I saw Benjamin's car pulling into the driveway. I watched from the window as he and Victoria stepped out, their faces smug, confident, carrying folders thick with legal documents. They thought they were walking into a victory. They had no idea they were about to walk into a trap of their own making. My heart was pounding, but my mind was crystal clear. For the first time in a long time, I felt the fire of the woman I used to be. The woman who had built a business, who had raised a son alone, who had outlasted heartbreak and hardship. They thought I was weak, but they were about to learn that betrayal has consequences. The front door opened with the familiar squeak of its hinges. Sophie, innocent as ever, ran to greet her parents, holding a plate of cookies we had baked together. "Mommy, Daddy, I told Grandma about your surprise," she chirped. Victoria froze mid-step, her face draining of color. "What surprise, sweetie?" she asked carefully, her voice tight. The one about the nursing home and the money, Sophie said brightly. You said it was supposed to be a secret, but Grandma makes the best cookies when she's happy, so I thought she should know early. The silence that fell in my living room was deafening. Joyce sat calmly at the kitchen table, her sharp eyes observing everything, while I sat in my armchair, hands folded neatly in my lap, as if we were discussing dinner plans rather than betrayal. Benjamin recovered first, his training as an investigator kicking in. He put down his folder and clipboard, his voice oozing with false concern. Mom, we need to talk. We've been worried about you. We found a wonderful facility where you'll be cared for properly. I gestured at the manila folder Victoria was clutching. Are those the commitment papers? My voice was calm, grandmotherly even, but each word was dipped in steel. Victoria tried to smile, but her mask cracked. Elaine, you don't understand. The house is too much for you. Your finances are complicated. We're trying to protect you from people who might take advantage. People like yourselves, I said sharply, my eyes locked on hers. Benjamin's jaw tightened. We've consulted medical professionals, Mom. There are concerns about your memory, your cognitive functions. I stood, my voice rising with each word. You mean the lapses you've been exaggerating? The confusion you've been planting in my doctor's mind? The stories you fed to Sophie so she could report back on me? For a moment, neither of them spoke. Victoria shifted nervously and Benjamin's face flushed red. You were going to have me declared incompetent, I said, so you could steal my $1.2 million estate. Their eyes widened at the exact figure, proof enough that Sophie had told me everything. Victoria stepped forward, her voice trembling but desperate. We weren't stealing. We just wanted to make sure the money was managed properly before you lost it. The only thieves I see, I snapped, are standing in my living room trying to trick me with falsified evaluations and forged documents. Benjamin tried another tactic, softening his tone. Mom, we're not enemies. We just want what's best for you. Managing an estate this size is stressful at your age. Wouldn't it be easier to let us handle it while you enjoy your retirement? I laughed cold and sharp. Enjoying my retirement in a nursing home while you enjoy your new house with my money? The facade finally shattered. Victoria's voice rose, her composure breaking completely. You can't just dismiss our concerns. We've already invested months into planning this. We've even put a down payment on the house. I turned to Benjamin, my heart aching even through the rage. You quit your job, didn't you? You were so sure you'd win, so sure you could strip me of everything that you gambled your future on my downfall. He looked at the floor, guilt flooding his face. I walked slowly to my desk and pulled out the trust documents Patricia had rushed over just hours before. Holding them high, I felt stronger than I had in years. I'm afraid your plan has already failed. Every asset you thought you'd inherit is now locked away in an irrevocable trust. Sophie, not either of you is the beneficiary. Benjamin lunged forward, snatching the papers from my hands. His eyes darted across the text, his face turning pale. This can't be legal. You can't just give away our inheritance. Your inheritance? My voice turned cold as ice. Benjamin, this was never yours. These assets are mine, and I chose to protect them from children who would betray their own mother. Victoria tore the papers from him, her hands shaking as she read. The house, the investments, everything is gone. I looked her squarely in the eyes. Yes, gone out of your reach. While you were arranging to lock me away, I was arranging to ensure your greed could never touch my legacy. Joyce finally spoke, her tone professional and firm. What you two attempted is elder abuse. Fraud. You could face criminal charges for this. Victoria's face twisted with desperation. You don't understand, Elaine. We've already made commitments. If we can't access that money, we'll lose everything. Then lose it, I said coldly. Lose it the same way you tried to make me lose my dignity. The look on their faces at that moment, pure panic, their carefully built scheme collapsing in an instant, was a sight I will never forget. Sophie looked up from her coloring book, her small voice piercing the silence. Did I do something wrong, Grandma? My heart ached, but I pulled her close. No, sweetheart. You did the bravest thing of all. You told the truth. The air in the living room was thick, heavy with a tension that seemed to press down on all of us. Benjamin's hands shook as he clutched the useless commitment papers, while Victoria's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape from the walls closing in on them. I remained standing, my back straight, my voice calm, though inside my heart hammered like a drum. You think this is over? Benjamin muttered, his voice low, almost to himself. We can challenge this trust. We'll find a lawyer who says you were coerced or that you didn't understand what you were signing. I took a step toward him, holding his gaze the way I used to when he was a boy caught lying. By all means, Benjamin, challenge it. Patricia Wong would be delighted to depose you both under oath. Every manipulation, every falsified story, every attempt to paint me as incompetent will come out. Do you really want that on record? Victoria's face crumpled. Tears welled in her eyes as the weight of their collapsing scheme bore down. We're going to lose everything, she whispered. The deposit on the house, Benjamin's job, our credit. How are we supposed to survive this? I looked at her, the woman my son had chosen to share his life with, the woman I had welcomed into my family. And all I felt was an emptiness carved by betrayal. Perhaps you should have thought of survival before you built your future on stealing from me. Benjamin set the papers down with shaking hands. His voice rose in desperation, the practiced control slipping away. It wasn't stealing, Mom. It was planning for the future. You're almost 70. You can't live alone forever. We just wanted to be prepared. Prepared by declaring me incompetent, by locking me in a nursing home, and taking my life's work for yourselves. My voice cracked, the pain beneath the rage spilling out. Do you remember, Benjamin? You were 12 when your father died. I worked 2 jobs. I sacrificed sleep, health, happiness, all so you could go to college, so you could have a life. And this is how you repay me, by trying to erase me. The silence that followed was suffocating. Even Victoria didn't dare speak. Sophie looked up from her coloring book, sensing the storm, but not understanding it fully. Her small voice trembled as she asked, Grandma, are Mommy and Daddy in trouble? I smoothed her hair gently, my heart breaking at the innocence of her question. Yes, sweetheart, I said softly. But sometimes people have to face the consequences of their choices. That night, after they left my house, defeated, the phone rang over and over. Benjamin's voice filled the answering machine with pleading messages. Mom, we can fix this. Please don't do this to us. Think of Sophie. Think of the family. Victoria's calls were angrier, her voice sharp and demanding. You can't just cut us off. You have to undo this trust. It isn't fair. I let every call go to voicemail. Their words, once they would have wounded me deeply, now only confirmed that I had done the right thing. Their greed was louder than their love, and I would not let it consume me. The next morning, they came to my door again, dressed more neatly, their faces arranged into masks of calm. Benjamin held himself stiffly, speaking in that measured tone he used in his line of work. Mom, we've spoken with our attorney. He believes Patricia Wong took advantage of you, that you were in a fragile emotional state. The trust can be challenged. I let them inside, though my smile was razor sharp. And what does your attorney think about your plan to falsify medical reports, to coach Sophie into telling lies about me, to trick me into signing documents I didn't understand? Benjamin's face paled, and Victoria's composure cracked like thin ice. That's not true, she sputtered. We only wanted to protect you. I reached for the folder I had prepared overnight and laid it on the coffee table. Protect me, or protect your dreams of a bigger house and a life you didn't earn. Their eyes widened as I opened the folder to reveal recordings notes and copies of documents they had carelessly left behind during their visits. Patricia had helped me compile it all, a timeline of their deception, evidence of their manipulation. Victoria's voice rose in panic. You recorded us! That's illegal! Not when it's done to defend myself against elder abuse, I said coldly. In Alabama, protecting myself from family members planning fraud is perfectly legal. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw the fear in Benjamin's eyes. Genuine fear, not for me, not for what they'd done, but for themselves. He realized they weren't just losing an inheritance, they might be facing the law. His voice cracked as he asked, What do you want from us, Mom? I looked at him, the boy I had raised, now a man, standing before me, stripped of the integrity I thought I had given him. My heart ached with grief, but my words were steady. I want you to understand that your greed has cost you everything. The money, my trust, and most of all the bond between us. You chose betrayal over love, and now you have nothing. Victoria's sobs filled the room. Benjamin's shoulders sagged under the weight of his ruin. And I thought my heart felt shattered, stood taller than I had in years. Joyce knocked softly on the door before stepping inside, her presence calm yet commanding. She wasn't alone. Beside her stood a woman with a clipboard and a man in a dark suit who introduced himself with a firm handshake. "Detective Williams' Elder Fraud Division," he said. The woman nodded politely. "I'm with Adult Protective Services." Benjamin and Victoria froze like deer in headlights. Victoria's tears dried instantly, replaced by wide-eyed panic. "This is harassment," she snapped. "We were just trying to care for Elaine. This is a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding." Joyce's voice cut through the room, sharp as glass. "I'm a retired social worker. I've seen elder abuse in all its forms. What you two planned was criminals stripping Elaine of her independence, falsifying her mental state, and stealing her assets. That isn't care. That's exploitation." Detective Williams set his briefcase on the coffee table, flipping it open to reveal neatly organized files. "We've reviewed the evidence provided: recordings, documents, timelines. It's more than sufficient to open a criminal case for attempted financial exploitation." Benjamin's face turned ashen. "We haven't broken any laws. We were exploring legal options. Legal options don't involve falsified reports and tricking an elderly parent into signing away her life," the detective said, his voice flat with authority. "And coaching a child to spy on her grandmother, that borders on psychological abuse." I sat silently, watching their carefully constructed world collapse piece by piece. My hands were steady on my lap, though inside I felt a storm of grief and vindication. Victoria's voice rose shrill and desperate. "You don't understand. We've already made commitments. We put money down on a house. Benjamin quit his job because we thought—" "You thought wrong," I interrupted, my voice cold but unwavering. "You built your future on the assumption that I was weak, that I was confused, that I was disposable. But you underestimated me, and now you'll pay for it." Benjamin's bravado cracked. His shoulders slumped, his eyes darting between the detective, the APS worker, and me. "Mom, please, we can fix this. Don't ruin us. Think of Sophie. She needs her parents." At the sound of her name, Sophie looked up from her coloring book, confusion clouding her big eyes. "Grandma, are Mommy and Daddy bad?" My heart squeezed painfully. I pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. "Sweetheart, they made bad choices. And sometimes when people make bad choices, they have to face the consequences." Victoria sobbed, covering her face with trembling hands. "We'll lose everything. The house, our savings, our reputation. Please, Elaine, don't do this. We were only thinking of the future." "The future," I said bitterly. "You tried to steal mine. You wanted to erase me, lock me away, and spend the fortune I worked 40 years to build. That isn't protecting the future, it's destroying it." Detective Williams closed his folder. "Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, you should seek legal counsel. Formal charges will be filed by the end of the week. Attempted financial exploitation of an elderly person is a felony in this state." The words landed like a hammer. Benjamin swayed as if struck, while Victoria let out a strangled cry. I stood, my voice quiet but firm. "Do you know the greatest irony of all this? If you had simply come to me honestly, if you had told me you were struggling, I might have helped you. I might have supported you as a mother should. But instead, you chose betrayal. And now you have lost not just my support, but my trust, my love, and your future." They had no answer. The fight drained from them, leaving only hollow shells of the people I thought I knew. The detective escorted them out their steps, heavy, their silence deafening. That night, after Sophie had fallen asleep in her bed, the room I now knew would be hers permanently, I sat alone by the window. My house, once filled with memories of sacrifice and love, now echoed with the ghosts of betrayal. Yet beneath the sorrow, I felt something fierce and steady: survival. I had protected my dignity. I had protected my granddaughter's future. And I had proven once and for all that age is not weakness. The following weeks passed in a blur of legal proceedings, whispered gossip in the neighborhood, and sleepless nights spent staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything had come to this. My phone filled with voicemails from Benjamin, his voice swinging between anger and desperation. Victoria sent long, rambling texts begging me to reconsider, to undo the trust, to give them another chance. I deleted every message. Some wounds cut so deep that no apology could ever stitch them shut. The day the charges were filed was the day the last thread snapped. Attempted elder fraud, financial exploitation. Words I never imagined would be connected to my son. Benjamin, the boy I once rocked to sleep, now stood in court, accused of trying to strip me of my dignity. His once proud posture was gone, replaced by the hunched shoulders of a man drowning in his own ruin. Victoria sat beside him, her face streaked with tears, her eyes hollow. Their downfall was swift. Benjamin lost his job in insurance, blacklisted from the industry. Victoria, once a respected office manager, was fired from her position the moment her employer learned of the charges. The house they had dreamed of was lost, their deposit gone, their credit destroyed. And their marriage, already fragile, crumbled under the weight of blame and bitterness. Through it all, Sophie stayed with me more and more. At first it was temporary, just until things settle, they said. But as weeks turned into months and months into a year, it became permanent. My home, once echoing with silence, now filled with the laughter of an 8-year-old child. She brought light to the shadows that betrayal had left behind. One evening, as I tucked Sophie into bed, she looked up at me with those wide, earnest eyes. "Grandma, will Mommy and Daddy ever stop being mad at you?" I brushed her hair back gently and kissed her forehead. "Sweetheart, sometimes people make choices they can't undo, and sometimes anger comes from knowing they caused their own pain. But that's not your fault. You are loved. You are safe. That's what matters." And as I said it, I realized it was true. For all the destruction Benjamin and Victoria had tried to cause, they had also given me something priceless, a second chance to be a mother through my granddaughter. The community whispered, of course. Neighbors looked at Benjamin and Victoria with disgust. Word spread quickly about what they had tried to do. Invitations dried up. Old friends kept their distance. They became pariahs, known not for their achievements, but for their betrayal. Meanwhile, I found unexpected support. People who admired the way I had defended myself, who saw me not as a victim but as a survivor. Still, there were nights when the grief overwhelmed me. Grief for the son I thought I had. Grief for the family dinners I would never have again. Grief for the love that had been corrupted by greed. I would sit by the window, the house quiet except for Sophie's breathing down the hall, and I would let the tears come. Because no matter how strong I appeared, no matter how victorious the outcome, I had still lost something irreplaceable. But in those moments, I also reminded myself of the lesson I had learned. Strength isn't about never breaking. It's about what you do when someone tries to break you. I had been tested in the cruelest way, and I had survived. Not just survived, I had reclaimed my dignity, secured my legacy, and ensured that Sophie would grow up with at least one example of integrity in her family. A year after it all began, I stood in Sophie's school auditorium watching her perform in a play. She spotted me in the crowd and waved, her face lighting up. In that moment, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. My inheritance wasn't just money, it was the values I passed down, the resilience I showed, the love I gave freely, even when it wasn't returned. As I walked her home that evening, her small hand nestled in mine, I realized that betrayal had not defined me. What defined me was what came after: courage, protection, and the quiet triumph of a woman who refused to be erased. So if you are listening to my story tonight, I want you to take this with you. Never let anyone convince you that age is weakness. Never let betrayal silence you. Sometimes the very moment they think they've buried you is the moment you begin to rise. If my story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment and tell me, have you ever been underestimated, and how did you rise above it? Let's remind the world that no matter our age, our strength and our dignity are ours to protect.